Lonesome Lands podcast. This is just a Lonesome Lands podcast, right? Lonesome Report. Uh, December 9th, 1:50 p.m. Just in case any breaking news happens. Why are you shaking your head?
I don't know.
All right. Shad's starting out negative. We're going to talk about the Kings, not the big King Ranch in Texas, but the King Ranch in what's Washington?
Washington
Oh,
State.
the Trump roundtable, I suppose, is the biggest news. We're gonna get into the checkoff, and I cannot overemphasize. I've been a harsh critic of the checkoff. I could not imagine them doing what they are doing right now. Just leave it at that for now. I haven't told
Well,
Shad because I want to see his genuine reaction when I explain this to him. Um, and then a couple other little things if we got time. This episode is brought to you by the Triangle S, the Fortune family out of South Dakota, and the Triangle S Ranch. They are selling 60 coming 3-year-olds, registered Angus, and all have raised a calf to weaning, selling at Fort Pierre Livestock January 17th, 2026. In their annual private treaty bull sale, they are Angus breeders is February 14th, 2026. That is Kathy and Wayne Fortune. They have been probably one of my biggest supporters from the get-go. They
great
support me going out
followers.
to the South Dakota stock growers. They're a big supporter there.
Yep.
And then other things through the years. Check out their website or follow on Facebook. Their website is Fortune, Fortune, Triangle S Ranch. I'll do it all at once. FortuneESRANCH.com. Interior South Dakota is where they're out of.
Super nice people. Super
Yes.
nice.
So go to their website or call Wayne 605-891-8064 or Raleigh, I believe it's their son, 605-891-8065. Pretty easy. Yeah, Kathy and Wayne Fortune, they're selling some calves January 17th at Fort Pierre, where their annual Angus bull sale is February 14th, 2026. Thank you to them for,
Thank you.
but also go to lonesomelands.com, click on support, or go to partners and you can see all our advertisers. You'll find their website. It's not up there yet, but I'm gonna put a link to it on there.
Yeah.
But if you go to support, I said last week I'd have a Christmas present. Anybody who is subscribed or click subscribed and just send us money. All of our content is free, so as far as a subscription, it's just kind of helping us keep going, doing what we're doing. And I've never had anything for those people, but I'm holding up now what I'm going to call luggage tag. Some might consider this an ear tag. These are Ritchie ear tags, engravable, which I have engraved the picture that we use on one of our t-shirts. It's actually based off a E. E. Smith photograph from the J.A. Ranch in like the 1920s or 10s maybe. And then it says Lonesome Lands. And then we put a night sky on it. And there's the backside of it. So these are going to be luggage tags. So if you have subscribed, I'm going to put your last name on the back. And then this little number, this is kind of a prototype. So it might not be exactly, and I'm keep getting out of focus here. But then underneath of that is going to be your phone number. And I put that real little just in case, Shad goes walking through the airport and some pretty girl comes along. I don't want her being able to see that number from a long way away. But
Like it would matter.
yeah, I know
Speaking
they're
of that,
chasing you around.
speaking of that historic photo that you have on the front of that tag, I got a message today from Mindy Patterson with the Cavalry Group at the NFR wearing her Lonesome Lands t-shirt with that image. Pretty
Thank
cool.
you, Min.
Yeah.
For yeah. So anyway, maybe more on that later. Um,
Let's get to it.
Trump roundtable. That was the big news, which I guess we'll have to start. Which I told Shad, everybody's talking about that, so we won't spend a ton of time on it. But I did watch the whole thing because I can go back and my mom texted me that it was going on, and so then I go and record the shows that it's actually on. But anyway, The main, I guess he got into first. He got in the estate tax cut, and Trump. They talk about, well, he doesn't know anything about the cattle business, which I agree. But he talked about being land rich and cash poor, and how getting rid of the estate tax is helping people keep their farms and ranches and their families. And he even talked about, he talked about the selling off of farms because they have to pay that tax once the
Yeah.
parents die, and that forces them to eventually have to sell off their farms and ranches. Um, and so that was interesting. He even got into the suicides, like how, it puts a ton of pressure on people, and there is a lot of farmer suicides through the years. And that's kind of a major cause of it. When you have to sell off great grandpa's
Yep.
place, it's pretty
Yep.
depressing. So,
And I know one personally that did it, and it was a terrible tragedy.
yeah. Well, thanks for bringing everybody down, Chad.
Sorry.
And he also got
But
into,
it's a real issue that we need to talk more about in agriculture.
yeah, I know. See, I'm not very good at talking about it because I'll just start joking. That was bad on me. Sorry,
That's
Chad.
all right. You're okay.
Um, there are better people to talk about it. That's why I don't know. Anyway, moving on. He also talked about one of the things I think, people haven't talked that much about, but I thought it was the most interesting thing he said was getting rid of the environmental restrictions on equipment. And they didn't ask about details on that, but that sounds like we're getting rid of DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, which
That
would
well,
be
that's the plan.
a huge step. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, but I mean,
Yeah.
we've had it for so many years and had to deal with it so much that it's like I can't believe we're just
Well,
going to
one
get
of
rid of it. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and one of the
Yeah.
things he said was he was talking about this equipment, which I didn't watch the whole thing like you did, but he's talking about this equipment and he's talking about the new equipment. And listen, I felt him there because I have this tractor, 1992 tractor with 11,000 hours on it, and I don't like to farm, but I have to farm a little bit, and that tractor is easy to work on. And then my neighbor has literally a 3-year-old tractor that they've had to spend 100 grand on above and beyond. So he was making valid points. I'm like, yeah, that really did happen, and I've witnessed it. So that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And I don't know if that'll get into actually, like he was mainly talking about farm equipment, but then it gets into the trucking industry. I mean, if you know anybody in the trucking industry, they talk about everybody I know trades off trucks before they get out of warranty because because as soon as they're out of warranty, I mean, every problem they have is an emission problem, and so as soon as they're out of warranty, then they know those problems are going to just multiply, and over the
Yeah.
road guys, they kind of have to have all that
Yeah,
leave
they
that
got to
stuff
keep them
on.
going
So,
for sure.
but yeah, he was mainly talking about equipment, and he talked about John Deere. I think there was somebody from John Deere there maybe, but he said they're all that also is going to cost make sure he's going to make sure they lower their prices because it's going to reduce the price of manufacturing and all of that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
so I don't know how he can do that, but it sounded pretty good to me. He said, "Take that." I got quote him, "Take that crap off." That's what he said. We're going to take
That's
that crap
awesome.
off. Talks about always being under repair. Yeah, but he did get into beef prices one time, and he kind of said beef. He was talking about the prices of all the groceries are coming down, and he said beef prices are starting to come down. I don't know what that is, but I made note of it, I guess. Um, and then so these are just notes. I haven't even been back over them. This Austin Scott, do you know where he's out of?
I don't know.
He had a number of representatives there. There was Deb Fisher from Nebraska, Boozman out of Arkansas. This Austin Scott, I can't think of where he's from, but he talked about a deforestation regulation where the European Union won't buy lumber that is cut down to clear for farmland or something, which I made a note of that. Like I
Which
should,
that is true, and they will not. That is part of the global round. Say, for example, that is part of the global roundtable for sustainable soy. The European Union will not buy soybeans that have been grown on land deforested.
well, yeah, I guess that means yeah, I got to be honest about it. So I mean, I'm sure they're buying all the soybeans from Brazil when they say, "Oh no, we didn't cut the forest down."
Yeah, exactly.
Um, anyway, I guess. what was really interesting to me is the way that these, I don't watch like the cabinet meetings, but it is interesting. He had a 3 hour cabinet meeting. The whole thing was televised last week,
Yeah,
right? Like, and he talks about like Biden never even had a cabinet meeting. You wouldn't see the guy for 6 months, and Trump sitting there for
exactly.
3 hours and letting all of his cabinet. And if you want to watch it, you can get on there and watch it. So when this guy, this Scott brought up the deforestation thing, Trump didn't know anything about it. He's like, "What's that?" He goes, "We'll get that fixed. We'll get that." He hadn't even heard about it, but it's like on his list now, you
Well, you
know.
can't even prove that in the United States anyway. It's ridiculous. But it's going to be pretty cool when Lonesome Lands is in on one of those
Oh yeah, yeah. Can't wait to
uh
get in there.
meetings. Yeah.
But I felt this the star of the show was this Meryl, who's out of Louisiana. And
Yeah.
she knew her stuff there. She was
What's
sitting
her
right
name?
next Meryl.
Meryl what?
I didn't write the last name down. We'll have to look it up. But she was talking about the rice, which I don't know anything about rice, but she was talking about the tariffs and how other countries kind of undercut the U.S. on purpose. And she said, we want fair trade, not free trade, which I thought that was
That's
great.
right.
That's a great
Yeah.
line. But then, there was an Iowa, so there was two farmers that talked. One was a rice farmer out of Louisiana, which was her, and then the other one was I know his name, Court Holub. It was Cordt, Cord Holub. And he was a corn farmer from Dysart, Iowa, which is over by Cedar Rapids, quite a ways
Is
east of
that
me, but
Dissert?
no, Dysart, Dysart, Iowa. Which if you're familiar, it's like straight east of Cedar Rapids, not very far.
Okay.
But he he was good. He was a younger guy, and he talked about how his kid didn't want Santa Claus to come. He wanted Donald Trump to come to the house, and then he said
Yeah,
something
that was
about
pretty funny.
Trump being Santa Claus, which I kind of hated to hear because I don't really want to think of this as like Trump is delivering gifts to the farmers, but and this kind of goes in, as a conservative, my daughter was like, "So is this a good, are you for this?" She's asking me, Sage, if you've watched this deal, you've probably seen her. And she's like, "Are you for this thing or against it?" I'm like, "Well, I'm never really for the government handing out money, but this one is supposedly the whole thing was about a 12 million, or as Rollins said, it's $11 million or $1 billion, and they're holding one back.
Hmm.
But it's apparently it's from tariff
Revenue.
tariff revenue that they're now going to be giving out to farmers. So it's not really like, I guess, taxpayer revenue, but they're so far in debt and whoever, all of it just kind of, I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked into it that much to really, I try to explain that to her, but you just, I don't know. It's when you talk to farmers too, it's kind of like sometimes they'll get checks in the mail. They're not even sure what they're for. And
I
then you
I
have these
know.
farmers that have their whole farm split up between 10 different family members so that they can stay under the limit and they can all get millions of
That's
dollars.
right. There's so much complexity and there is a lot to all of this. And I'm still getting um, calls or texts. I got a couple of texts yesterday from farmers that are like, there is a massive herd sell off, especially in Arkansas, due to this tariff deal that's Trump has caused. And I don't know how to respond to all of that.
And what is the
And I'm
deal
just
with
like,
Arkansas
what?
too?
I don't
They had
know.
MSNBC brought this guy on and they were like, so he's giving away $10 billion to farmers. And this guy's from Arkansas. Well, that ain't near enough. We're still
I
going for
know. I know that
it.
that's basically the gist. What I got from this text yesterday is like, we need more money. We need it right now, yesterday. And I'm like, I don't have anything to do with this, you know?
Right. And but
I mean,
also, and
they're
even
in a
with
panic.
this corn farmer, this Cord Holub, he said he
Uh-huh.
was like sixth generation, I think. And I'm almost like, and he's like, we're this is going to give us breathing room so we can make it to next year. And I'm kind of like, if you're sixth generation and you can't make it to next year, I mean, I don't know. I guess
Well, I
I'm not,
mean,
as I've always said, on my family's farm, I'm a hired hand and I'm not into, the
well,
finances or anything
on our
else.
ranch, I am the CEO, I'm the executive director, and I am the number one hired hand. But you can look at that in two perspectives, Jim, and you have to, because we don't know everybody's story. I am a fifth and sixth generation, or Beatty is, my son is, depending on what side of the family you're talking about. But we've never inherited anything. There was nothing passed down. We're proud of our generational production, and we've stayed in the business. My parents bought ranches. I've bought some land and stayed in the business. So there's that perspective. And then if you're talking, I'm a sixth generation that I have. My ancestors have put it all together and we've passed it down and we've increased it and we've been able to influence our local communities. That's that's a different perspective. So when somebody says I'm sixth generation, it doesn't mean that they aren't in debt up to their eyeballs
Oh yeah.
or that they've inherited everything. Sixth generation is just a position of pride and of your heritage and legacy. Now there are those, and I believe that once you get east, you go back east. There are these farmers who have I think the subsidy programs have benefited the corporate farms the most because they're the powerhouses. They have the most land. They get all these subsidies, and then they break it into just what you just got done saying into many many owners, and then and people get bigger, and that's how the monopolization comes to be.
Yes, and so you're right. We don't know everybody's story. You know,
Right.
my story is my dad has been probably conservative and he's 77 years old and he has seen the good times and the hard times and he knows when the good times come, the hard times are coming. And so
Dang it. That sounds like my dad, and
I
I
feel
just
like we're a little, I mean, we're not, begging for, I'm not saying this kid was begging for money, but you're right. And that's the other thing about as the generations continue, you have more and more people who need an income, and then
our
you have to
heirs.
buy land, and with land
Yes.
prices never going down,
Yes.
and you think, well, if we're gonna, add these people, right? Like we
That's
brought
right.
in me, I work on the farm, my brother is a full-time employee, my nephew's a full-time employee, and as you keep adding generations, you
Uh-huh.
have to have more and more income, I guess, to keep everybody.
And listen, I mean, there is fraud in the system. I mean, I've heard of many families that I've heard of one family in Colorado that bought this big, huge ranch and broke it up into pieces among themselves, like 13 different pieces, and put it in every single program available. And I heard at one time they were like drawing $700,000 a year in payment programs off of that one piece of land. And that's not right either.
Right.
So, I'm not an expert on all that, but I will tell you all of that does happen.
Yeah, and yeah, but I mean, we're still in less than a year of the this Trump administration and the USDA that I'm thinking would like to fix a lot of these issues. But the
Absolutely.
main
And I
thing is
sup
to keep people in business. I think that's their main goal right now, and that's what this is. And the one thing coming out of the deal, you can't say that Trump doesn't appreciate farmers. So, I mean, anyway, like the whole thing was just a farmer appreciation love fest. But
well,
he also said, what he has learned more than anything about farmers is they don't want aid, they
yep,
want a level playing field.
yep,
And so, how do you get there without this tariff thing, which ends up hurting commodity prices at times? And then you have farmers hurting, and then you have to. I mean, that was his point. But he said, I have seen that more than any other industry. They don't
which
want
made me
aid.
happy.
Right. They don't want aid. They want a level playing field. And so I feel like he does understand kind of the mentality of agriculture, which
Well, and on
that's
top of
what it
that,
is.
yeah, and on top of that, it shows that he is listening because that is what the majority of ag producers say. We don't want a handout. We want a level playing field. And that's why I
Right.
like the guy. But I mean, what I've learned in of across the board here, Jim, is that it doesn't matter if you're in agriculture, if you're in logging or whatever industry you're in, we're all split between Democrats and Republicans. And the problem is everybody is so split on their stinking dadgum uh, political party that they fail to see that things are actually happening. And that's something I've been experiencing today. Obviously, on social media, I'm watching all these people and they're like, well, his threats are, his comments about, reform in the monopoly. It's just comments. Nothing ever happens. But the truth is, yesterday it happened, and we have it, and we have all of these promises, not promises, but his looking into of all of these issues that we've been talking about all these years. These are actually taking place, and he is bringing people together and task forces together to audit and go over all of these issues and say, okay, is this a position we can move forward on? These are things that Democrats and Republicans alike have been talking about for years. And we actually finally have action from a presidential administration that a lot of people probably don't like. I happen to love it because they are following through on their word. And so
Yeah.
that's what I have to say to all the grumpy people out there. And there's a bunch of them.
But
Yeah.
yeah, to go back, I guess December 6th, executive order addressing security risks from price fixing and anti-competitive behavior in the food supply chain.
Yes.
This is from the White House, presidential actions.
Yes.
He says anti-competitive behavior, especially when carried out by foreign-controlled corporations, threatens the stability and affordability of America's food supply. In recent years, certain companies in the American food supply chain have even settled lawsuits accusing them of price fixing for tens of millions of dollars. Billions of dollars, actually, I believe.
Well, you and
Foods,
I just talked about the price fixing that Tyson has settled over the past year,
yeah,
one
I know.
year.
That's
You
one
know,
thing I wanted to bring into this conversation about this beef plant shutting down. They paid $140 million, I think, in price fixing lawsuit. They had settlements in 1 week. They had 1 week of, I think, during October. Maybe it was September. They paid out 100, or they announced that they were paying out 140 in two different settlements.
right?
But when I read this whole thing, this anti-competitive, they really go in on the foreign controlled, which made me think. I mean, I read the whole thing and I'm thinking JBS, but they
Yeah.
got into, they're
Smithfield.
talking about grains and fertilizer and everything. All these task forces. He's assembling task forces to investigate the you know, food supply chain security task force, I guess is what he's calling it.
The
To
simple
un
recognition that President Trump sees in that the food supply chain is a national security issue is astounding to me. I
yeah.
mean, that is one of the top people in our lives, in our generations, that has ever said anything about it. Nobody said anything about it till now.
Yeah. I think it goes back to too, like what we said during the election where people were saying, I'm not just voting for Donald Trump, I'm voting for RFK Jr., which I'm guessing probably had a lot to do with this
Sure.
thing. I'm voting for Elon Musk. I'm voting for, which apparently is back in the good graces, but just all of the people that he is going to bring in who are against all this corruption. Like Brooke Rollins, if we knew she was on the ticket, we definitely would have. We were voting for people like her to be in the cabinet
Absolutely.
to come in and fix all of this stuff.
I go back to what Eric Groper always says. It's not a right and left issue, it's a right and wrong issue. These are
Yeah.
just the right things to do.
Yeah. And we know past administrations have said that they're doing this kind of stuff too, but it feels different this time. I will say that. And I
It does
guess
feel
time will
different.
tell. And we're, like I said, we're less than a year in and we're pedal to the
Let me
metal on this kind of stuff. And the biggest thing, going back to that meeting and what Rowan said, and I don't know how those people got in that room. I think a lot of them were connected to Farm Bureau, but
uh
she said multiple times, she did a bunch of interviews afterwards. And in a lot of her interviews, she always said, these aren't, ag industry lobbyist groups leadership, right? She said, these are actual farmers on the land.
they're the real deal.
Yeah, and even though they can be they're probably members. I think Iowa Farm Bureau guy with the Iowa guy and the Texas guy was a Farm Bureau guy, but still, even the state Farm Bureau is still
But
better
he
than
was,
having
yeah.
American Farm Bureau, which we will get to here in a
Well,
minute when I get into
that's the
checkoff.
truth. The guy from Texas was a rancher, and he was not the state director. He was just a regional representative of his region
Yeah,
in Farm Bureau.
and she made that very clear. These aren't
Yeah.
industry organization leadership. She
Yeah.
said it multiple times, and she said it on our podcast where
She
she said,
did.
"I am not of Washington D.C. I am not dealing with these lobbyist organization leadership." Or she said, "I'm not best friends with the organization presidents." I guess to go
Yeah.
back a direct quote, but yeah, and so that. that right there is a big step from any other administration. Even
Huge.
Trump, even the first one. Remember Zippy?
Yep.
He loved the name Zippy, and he was,
Yep.
"Where's Zippy? Come in here, Zip." That was Trump. He loved calling Zippy up to the podium because he just loved that name. I felt like, but Zippy Duvall was always around during Trump's first
Well,
administration.
yeah, you remember the day they rolled out the Corona virus food protection program, and you had the National Cattlemen's Beef Association on his right and Zippy Duvall on his left, and President Trump goes, "Why in the hell are we importing beef from Namibia anyway?" And their eyes got big, and then that was the end of what you heard from
Right.
Trump on those issues. It's a
Yeah.
whole different story now.
Right. Yeah. And for those not familiar, Zippy Duvall is the president, or what is he, CEO of American Farm Bureau?
He was the top dog at the. He's
Yeah.
the executive
Top dog.
director. Yeah.
I think that's the official title. But to go off of your property rights deal, King Ranch is getting more and more, not the King Ranch on all the pickups
Right.
in Texas, but they're getting the one in Washington, that the state of Washington, those poor farmers and ranchers. Anytime I think about the Northwest, I think of how they have to deal with,
Unreal.
with state governments that hate them and want to get rid of them. But
Yep.
and this is the prime example.
Exactly.
So go ahead. Shad's the
Yeah.
expert here.
So, we've covered this on the Lonesome Report. The King Ranch, Wade and Teresa King are generational ranchers out there in the state of Washington. And they own about, I don't know how much they own deeded wise, privately wise, but over 12,000 acres. And all of that land is interwoven into state-owned lands and federally owned lands, and there are no fence line boundaries. So you might there just isn't any fence line boundaries, so it's all interwoven. So back in 2021, they cleaned out 6.35 acres worth of stock tanks, so they would catch more water, and they were anonymously turned in by, we believe, a hunter or somebody that was hunting on the state land to the Washington State Department of Ecology. That followed with a fine of $267,000 for disturbing what they are calling wetlands, what the Department of Ecology is calling wetlands in Washington State. Now, these are not wetlands. They're basically what we call in Colorado a salt scald. They're an alkali area of alkalinity, and they clean these tanks out. And so the Department of Ecology decided they would fine them the $267,000. The Department of Natural Resources, DNR, then got involved. And it has become a long ordeal, a very, very long ordeal. They filed an injunction. The DNR and the Department of Ecology filed an injunction against the Kings, which meant that they could not talk about it and they could not produce off of that land because it is interwoven. They can't interwoven with their deeded land. They cannot produce off that land, so it's cost them millions and millions of dollars in lost opportunity costs, and then their defense costs have been enormous. Their lawyer fees, and so they are on the brink of destruction. This is all about the war on beef, the war on private property, your charters of freedom, and a couple weeks ago, the lawyers for the King Ranch did file a motion to dismiss the case. And this motion would eliminate that injunction so they could talk about it. And what has happened in that filing is that the Superior Court judge that was determining his position on it said, "I'm not going to be a part of this," and moved up, was promoted to an appellate court judge. So today, on this day, Secretary Rollins has issued a letter to the Department of Natural Resources in Washington State and the Department of Ecology, basically telling them that this has to end. This war on farmers and ranchers across America has to end. Otherwise, actions will be taken. And so that is super, super exciting for the the King Ranch and their family. We'll see what happens going forward, but certainly it has been very, very hard on them, and it is just an attack on private property, the land grabs. We see this all over the western part of the United States. Well, we've seen it all over, um, especially in the blue states. We're trying to do it in Colorado, New Mexico, everywhere. So there is a bit of good news and an update for the Kings. They did get the letter from Secretary Rollins. I have it right here. I was able to capture that this morning, and it is addressed to Casey Six Killer and Dave Up the Grove. Casey Six Killer is the director of the Department of Ecology in Washington State, and Dave Up the Grove is the commissioner of the public lands um, at the Department of Natural Resources in Washington State. And she's made it very clear that this cannot stand. So we'll see if there's any action from those overreaching bureaucratic organizations that want all production off the land. These are, we talk about centralization. These are collectivists. They're communists, and they don't believe that we should be producing on the land. And so that is a bit of good news out of Washington, D.C. and out of Washington State today. So we're going to keep everybody updated on the King case. That's been a big deal.
Did they have to sell off their cows then?
They have not sold off their cows. They have some other, if they have, they haven't told me. They do have some other land that they have had to move to. And, kind of when you're in that kind of position, Jim, sometimes you've got to double up. And that's probably what they've done. I mean, I need to talk to him about that. I actually have never asked Wade
Right.
if they have sold some cattle, but I do know that the bills are mounting, and they're mounting rapidly, and
Yeah.
they need us all to join in on in getting that fixed.
Right. And they're looking out across the cattle industry and all-time record profitability for cow calf guys, and they're like, what a
And
year.
they have, yeah,
Right. Yeah. They're getting
and
drained. But I mean, that
this
goes back into, our little cheerleading session we had there at the beginning of what we were talking about, and how this administration is, we are going from a Secretary of Agriculture who is sticking herself into these state issues. We're going to that from a USDA that was prosecuting the mods and wanted to throw them in
exactly,
jail for a fence that they never touched. I mean, it is
literally,
night and day
it
difference. And
is
so,
literally solving these cases.
yeah.
They are
And so for
literally fixing things for people, and that's got to be acknowledged. I mean, I just can't see. I don't understand the perspective of these other people that are saying, "Well, they're just like the other ones." No, Tom Vilsack went to work for a communist organization after his tenure at USDA, and Sonny Perdue told us to get big or get out. And Brooke Rollins says, "Let's go to the people and fix this."
Right. Same with Potter Valley Dams. She
Potter
mentioned
Valley
that in
Dams.
her. We've went in on that. I have a video. If you go through my YouTube channel with Keely Cavello talking about how California is trying to remove the water source for 600,000 people,
Yes.
which is the population of Wyoming, pretty much the state of Wyoming population, and by destroying these dams. And Secretary Rollins is doing everything she can. She said yesterday, "We hear you." She's sticking up for
It's
these people
awesome.
in these state issues.
And
And
let
I
me
was
tell you
thinking
another.
today, Shad, you called her Keely Cavello, but it's like if they save those dams, they should make a statue of her and put it right up
You
on
dang
top, I
right.
think,
You dang right.
because nobody was talking about that deal,
She
and
is a
she
true
is
American hero, that little girl is, and I can't wait to meet her in person. We've talked on the phone a lot, but I'll tell you another issue that's happening in the, that Secretary Rollins has come to the table on, and she's going to help, along with the Department of Interior, is the issue of the Colorado Department of Wildlife and their partner, the State Land Board, talking about, changing the management plans of these um, national grasslands, which would eliminate production on those grasslands down the road. And that has been taken to DC and met with Rollins too, with I think the American Stewards of Liberty went out there, the Lineker family went out there, met, and they're going to work on that. Secretary Rollins said the other day that they're going to start working on this wolf issue in New Mexico. And so we're actually having this conversation. It's amazing.
The other thing Brooke Rollins talks about when she talks about the past administration is the climate attacks and the Green New scam and all the climate BS that farmers and ranchers have had to deal with. And this past week, I was sent shout out to Micah Bristow of Circle 5 Ranch School, who has advertised on here before. He's as soon as this was posted by the Beef Checkoff, he sent it to me, or he said, "You got to check out this post." And when I first saw it, I didn't think it was that big a deal. And so the Beef Checkoff put on Facebook, "Your checkoff dollars are bringing beef into the science classrooms. Nearly 1.2 million students in more than 100 school districts from San Francisco to San Antonio to New York City are now learning about genetics, sustainability, and methane through the lens of beef production in a Beef Checkoff funded initiative from the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture." So I clicked on it and I started clicking through it. And this has been, I haven't written an article probably because we've been doing the podcast and I feel like videos reach more people, but I feel like this needs to be written down and outlined out. And I'm going to do videos on it. And this is just the beginning.
Okay.
And I have a hard time talking about it and writing about it because I am blindly enraged by what this is. And the first one is what I reposted this because the first thing I came across, I scanned through the lessons that are being sent out by the American Farm Bureau and the Beef Checkoff.
Okay.
And the one that caught my eye, it said methane and cattle, a climate connection. And the description was, in this task, students explore how biological processes within a cow's digestive system lead to the production of methane, a greenhouse gas. Students examine how ruminant animals such as cattle break down plant materials through microbial fermentation, the role of methanogenic microbes play, and how methane released into the atmosphere traps heat and can alter climate conditions. And I posted that on Facebook because I just saw it right away and I was like, this is complete and total BS that our checkoff dollars, for those not familiar, cattle producers pay $1 per head of every cattle they sell. $1 per head of that sale goes to the checkoff fund. That fund is now in schools teaching kids that methane released in the atmosphere traps heat and can alter climate conditions. So that initially enraged me. And then if you go to the rest of this deal, you can click through, you can find the student version of this lesson and you can find the teacher, what do they call it? Hold on a second here. The teacher guide. And the teacher guide really kind of lays out what they want to teach the kids. And what they want to teach the kids is not that cattle, it's not that just, so there's 4 parts of this lesson. The first lesson teaches kids how cattle produce methane and how damaging methane is to the climate. The second lesson, or they call them prompts, but part of these lessons are, the kids are supposed to act like or pretend, I guess, that they're working with Dr. Williams, which is a made-up climate scientist. And Dr. Williams is studying the impacts cattle have on the climate. And so for the second lesson number 2, Dr. Williams wants to create a clear and easy to understand visual that she can share with people. The goal is to explain how methane is produced in cattle and its connection to broader environmental systems. She's asked you to help her design a model that's scientifically accurate, but also simple enough for people without a science background to understand. So kids are being taught methane is cattle create methane. Methane is one of the most harmful greenhouse gas emission. There's graphs showing how much more harmful methane is than actual CO2. All of the climate BS that cattle producers have been attacked with for years now. Um, and that's all being taught in schools with cattle producers' dollars. And you have to make this so they and then they have to design this model to show that. And they have to make it so simple that people without a science background can understand it. Um, and so who are these people without a science background? Dr. Williams now needs help explaining the model to a group of farmers and ranchers and wants to make sure it connects what they already care about: healthy cattle, good feed, and protecting the land. So, this assignment is teaching kids how harmful cattle are and also teaching them how to explain how harmful cattle are to farmers and ranchers.
This is unbelievable.
It is mind blowing.
How do you make this up?
You couldn't devise anything worse to teach students for the cattle industry. This is, I have criticized the checkoff because of, I think they misuse funds. I think they fund the NCBA, all of that stuff. I gave a speech at RCAF where I talked about how my daughter had been taught in junior high that cattle were bad for the environment. And I was like, well, this is a good example of something the checkoff could address, right? And they could get into schools. This system, this Farm Bureau, this contract that they get through the checkoff is something I've said is a good thing. Like getting beef information into schools is something that the checkoff should do. But reading this, unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And so once they have, they've drawn out this model, they've made a way that they can explain, they can explain it to these dumbass farmers and ranchers who don't have a science background. They have to make it simple enough for people without a science background to understand. And then you find out those people are farmers and ranchers. And then you, like the assignment, write a short explanation that Dr. Williams could use when talking to ranchers. In your explanation, be sure to describe how energy moves from plants to methane to the atmosphere. Right? I mean, it's like, but then the last one is connect methane released by cattle to its effects on the atmosphere. I mean, it's like how to indoctrinate, teaching children how to indoctrinate farmers and ranchers.
Well, not
going
only
back to that, what's that?
It's not to indoctrinate, it's to alienate them.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
to make them the bad, it's to make the farmers and ranchers the bad guy. That's what this is doing. And I will tell you this, back in the day when I was a young man and we first had the Beef Checkoff voted in, we had local programs going into schools, and we've got one, a good program in Colorado going in there now. But we had good programs, and one of them I can remember is called When a Cow is More Than a Cow. And what that program did was teach school children everything about a cow that was good for the nation, good for their community, and good for the environment. What this part of the cow provided, how this byproduct became a product we use every day in our lives. It was phenomenal. It was a great program. So it was telling the kids, teaching the kids what the good things about the cow. Yeah. Now we're teaching the kids the bad things about the cow. And what this thing and the untrue things. I shouldn't say bad things because they're untrue. These things are untrue. And what we have seen from this, what you're seeing, I feel like is a perfect example of that incremental infiltration we've been talking about, and that seat at the table that everybody wants to sit down. We got to have a seat at the table. This is absolutely goes beyond ridiculousness. And the key here, though, is that I'm being forced to fund an ideology that is putting me out of business, and that's wrong.
I mean, all of and everything you can go into, like it says, make sure when you're talking to farmers and ranchers, make sure it connects to what they already care about: healthy cattle, good feed, and protecting the land, right? And what have farmers and ranchers been beat over the head with from Farm Bureau, NCBA, every ag media outlet out there? Sustainability, right? All those three things, like make sure you connect this methane and how it's destroying the climate to sustainability.
Yep.
And now we have
Yep.
NCBA and they have their climate neutrality goal and all of this BS that they've tried and tried and tried to get cattle people, to buy in on. And some of them are so bought in on that they are defending this. And I'm going to say right now, if you continue to defend this, I'm going to start calling people out by name. I mean, those people know who they are. And I posted like
Oh, everybody knows who they are.
a quick description of what this was. And you wouldn't believe how many people are like, well, you're not getting into the meat of the lesson. I have read every
Yeah.
word of the meat of this
Yeah.
lesson. I've read every word of this teacher guide and the student one and the overview. There's one conclusion you can come up with. And these people want to think that this lesson's getting handed out to like FFA advisors. This is getting handed out to science teachers that probably
Or
have
to
green hair and whatever in San Francisco who no one's
that's
more bought in on the climate issue
that's right.
than
That's what
them.
I'm
They could
saying.
be vegans, they could be animal rights activists. And what do you
They're
think
sure
they're going to
not
do
put
with this lesson? You
yeah,
think they're going to
they're sure
focus on the good things about the beef industry and all that, or are they going to
I
say
love it.
cattle ranchers are destroying the world?
And notice they're not putting it in the rural communities,
I don't know if
right?
they are or not.
Well,
But
they're
yeah,
putting it
what they
in
said
San
is
Antonio, San
right.
Francisco, New York. Those aren't rural communities uh, by far. But let's take this one step further. And I mean, this is part of, somebody got after me the other day for saying that colleges and universities have been central in taking kids off the land, and they have. And here's one example of it. Texas A&M University just had a sustainability summit this week. A friend of mine spoke there. This friend of mine says, I am so ashamed that I am so far behind. I accepted the speaking position there and had no idea that the carbon issue was the main central theme of this sustainability summit that Texas A&M University has been in on from the get-go. They were one of the first after UC Davis, OSU,
Oh yeah.
Kansas State, Colorado State.
And all of these science teachers who have been coming out of these universities, which most of the teachers are probably coming out of universities, which are way worse than the ag ones. And they're getting handed this lesson that teaches that cattle are destroying the climate.
Well, I
You
mean,
cannot read this lesson and tell me that that is not what it teaches.
it goes back to CattleCon 2023 when Dr. Miles Allen was the keynote speaker, who is a vegan activist talking about sustainability at a cattle industry convention,
He was
who,
keynote.
whose research peer was Dr. Marco Springman from the University of Oxford in England, as is Dr. Miles Brown, or Allen, who had their red meat study published by the Library of Science, which was founded by Miles Brown, CEO and founder of Impossible Foods. That's the infiltration we're looking at. This is not a surprise to me. But
Yeah, but you
the
can't
fact
think
that
of
I'm paying for this
yeah.
is out the door. And
That cattle producers are paying for this.
yep,
And that the beef checkoff, there's no way they read this and thought, "Oh, we're going to make a social media post about it." And all you people on the beef board who want to talk about how, "Oh, you need to get involved and all that." Well, what the hell are you doing with this thing? It is mind-blowing. And this is just
there,
one of the lessons. There's another lesson that talks about how you need to change how to breed cattle. It's supposed to teach kids about genetics, but the whole thing is how to create a genetic line that produces less emissions,
oh
right?
gosh,
Which goes right into the Angus Association,
Bezos Earth Fund.
right? Their partnership with Bezos. And I talked to a delegate on the Angus Association. He was like, "Well, there's a lot more that goes going into this." And that goes right into this exact lesson where they said, make sure you tie it in to the things about that cattle people care about, right? Like efficiency and all that, taking care of the land, all of that stuff. And the NCBA has brought that stuff up. They're like, well, if we don't change this, we're just going to get more droughts and all this stuff. Like they're buying into the whole climate change BS. It is unbelievable. And when you think about it, because I've been writing this up and just thinking about how many science lessons could you come up with cattle where before you need to get into how they produce methane. That's the main thing that they're focusing on that they produce. Why don't you create a science lesson where they produce the most nutritious, best food in the that you could possibly eat?
Or go back to the basics and teach kids what when a cow is more than a cow.
Right.
You know,
Or
it's just simple.
if you want to focus on methane, let's make a science uh lesson about what would happen if we removed all the cattle off the range. What would come in and eat and what would be the come in and replace cattle, right? It would be
Buffalo,
buffalo, it would
buffalo.
be elk, it would be deer, it would be moose. All of those animals have the exact same stump, or they're all ruminants. They all are methane, the biggest methane producers. The reason cattle are blamed for all the methane is because we have the most number of cattle. We get rid of all the cattle and we're going to have, massive numbers. Eventually, you would have massive numbers of buffalo, elk, moose, and deer, which are all ruminants, which all create methane the same way as cattle do.
Well, I
It's,
mean, we
it
we
is
did.
it goes back to, I'm gonna try hopefully use this quote from Keely Cavello's dad, Richard Brazil, and where he says, saying that cattle are bad for the environment is like saying fish are bad for the ocean. Cattle are part of the environment. You might as well blame volcanoes and you might as well blame the ocean and Old Faithful and
Well,
anything that puts any sort of gas into the
let's
air on climate change because
but let's
cattle are
get
the same thing.
you have to focus your efforts because those people have bought into the lie, as you would say, and you're not going to change them because they have been blinded. This is a spiritual war we're talking about, but we got to get back to the meat of this, and the meat of it is that cattle producers are paying for it. That's the problem here. And if we were to take that checkoff away, this would not be happening because they wouldn't have where there's money,
Yeah,
there's power, right? Where there's
right.
money, there's power. And this week, it's funny that we're talking about this because just this week, I had an individual text me. I know this individual very, very well. I will not bring the name up, but they are married into one of the biggest NCBA supporting families in the United States. And this person asked me, why can we not get checkoff reform voted on? Why didn't the people vote for this when you guys put out that referendum? And I said, well, we got 30,000 signatures and we needed 80,000 to require a vote on the referendum, right? To require a new vote. It hasn't been voted on since 1985. And he says, why aren't these ranchers voting for it? And I said, because the United States is made up mostly of small producers who all pay into the checkoff that don't know what the checkoff are or are not that concerned with it or believe that it's doing them some good. But they're so busy trying to make a living that they let this organization represent that for them. And that's the problem. And I said, until you people believe that you have to get involved on a grassroots level and say, Secretary Rollins, we've got to change this. We've got to reform this. Nothing's going to change. And that's the truth.
Right. And this, I feel like, is the biggest, I hate every bit about this, but it is an opportunity to open people's eyes. Um, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it out in front of people. I'm working on the article now. Hopefully, it'll be out around the same time this podcast will be, and I'll link to it. But I'm going to link to the teacher guide. You can look at the student guide.
Look
You
at
can
it
look at the
all.
overview, and
Absolutely.
I've got people if you want to come on and defend this stuff. Like I've already had people defending, there's been a lot of comments on my Facebook post, and there's people defending this. But I would suggest you go through this and read it word for word and understand what they're teaching kids, because there is no way you can read this and not realize that they are teaching kids that cattle are bad for the environment. And your dollars are paying for it. And so if you want to defend it, feel free, but you know, you're gonna look stupid. I mean, there's nothing else I could say to
Well,
you.
Jim, let me ask you a question. Am I the only one that feels like This is truly, truly a food security issue. We're sitting here with the lowest number of cattle in the United States, perhaps in our in history. Um, and we have these land grabs and attacks on the beef industry, on cattle producers. This bothers me. And maybe I'm just too radical, but I feel like, we're really not building the herd at this time. I think we're starting to a little bit, but it's going to take years. If these attacks and this double down continues from within our own industry, what are people outside of our industry going to
Oh
do?
yeah.
You
That's
know,
what I'm saying. Like, what is the climate activist science teacher who gets handed this lesson, which has a
they're
beef
jumping for
checkoff,
joy.
it has a beef checkoff little logo on the bottom of every page. What is he going to tell the students when he teaches this? And he points at that beef checkoff logo and he's like, cattle are so bad for the environment. The people raising cattle are paying you for this lesson.
Exactly. Exactly.
And what are them students going to think? Like that's his best argument right there. It's unbelievable. It is so unbelievable when you read this.
This has blown my mind.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, we're just getting started. So I guess strap in because
Let's leave it at that. We're
yeah.
just getting started.
Um, but
I'm
then you
proud
go
of
into
you.
it goes into these corporations and the other thing on the list, I guess, to move on.
Well, wait a minute. Let me make one point. And this is what I've noticed in the last couple of weeks is that um, we have talked about the war on beef and how the people who are raging the war on beef have doubled down during this Trump administration. They were getting free reign in the
Oh
Biden
yeah.
under the Biden regime, and Trump come out and said, "We are scrapping all climate stuff off of our website. We are working on these issues. This is baloney, right?" But those people are now doubling down. But I feel like people in our own industry who are either against Trump or are against what we are putting out there are also doubling down. I feel like the mainstream ag media is doubling down against Trump right now. I
Yeah.
feel it,
And if
you
you're
know.
paying attention, and it goes into NCBA, right? Like I think the same day we came out with we talked to Brooke Rollins and put that out there. I think Ethan Lane of NCBA did an interview on Ag Web where he can't shut up about Argentinian beef. It's the most infuriating thing that NCBA's ever seen. Well, guess who is sponsoring the first day of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association Cattle Convention?
Let me guess.
JBS.
JBS US.
Right? They have increased Brazilian imports this year. More, what is it? Up 30% or something?
Highest level ever.
Right. And not a peep out of them. Trump says something about Argentinian beef, and it's like they're on the campaign trail, anti-Trump campaign trail,
Yeah.
because they can't shut up about Argentinian beef. And the other thing is, that's the comment that sunk the market. Why is the National Cattlemen Beef Association coming out and continuously bringing up an issue that sunk the market, right? Like these guys. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the ag media and you look at it, definitely is an anti-Trump push
Oh,
because they are
absolutely.
getting locked out.
So you're telling me we have NCBA on one hand being sponsored by JBS USA for CattleCon 2025 or 26. And then on the other hand, they're damning President Trump for his Argentinian comments.
Right. Yeah.
This is what I call fork-tongued, or my
Right.
dad would call it. He used to say they're all fork-tongued, Shad.
Hmm.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, I mean, I guess the NCBA is no longer the worst. The other thing about this checkoff deal, I believe last year I think the checkout brings in around $80 million. Half of that goes to the national,
Right,
over half of that because a lot of the states send their money into
right.
NCBA too. But, there is millions, tens of millions of dollars in the checkoff fund. $600,000 this year, $800,000 last year went to this education deal. Probably one of the smallest contracts out there is going to make one of the biggest differences because it's in what did they say? 1.2 million schools or something? I mean, it's being taught to children. And it's so like you just blow the millions and millions and millions on all your other crap, and then you take your 600,000 where you have your chance to get into schools and teach kids like the youth of the country about the beef industry, and you use it to tell them that cattle are bad for the environment.
Oh,
There
man.
is no way of getting around this where
I
this
just,
is not the hands down worst thing any checkoff system has ever done. It is mind blowing. But
wow.
anyway, and it's hard for me. Like I said, I mean, I was almost, I don't understand, you can't come up with the words of how enraging and how, it's beyond like ironic that cattle producers are teaching kids how bad cattle are forced, it's not an option. You have to pay into this deal of how to teach kids how bad cattle are for the environment. And then they'll come out and be like, well, part of the lesson is like, well, you need to teach cattle, is teaching cattle farmers and ranchers how they can change how they operate, right? Through genetics and feed additives and how they feed their cattle and all this kind of stuff, which I guarantee all the science teachers are going to throw that out the window. They're going to be like, cattle are just bad, right? They're not going to focus on the feed additives or whatever. But right now, Denmark is killing cows by giving them
Correct.
low emission feed additives.
Right.
But it all comes back down to control. I mean, that's what the whole thing is. Like once cattle producers realize that they're destroying the environment, then we control their entire operations, how they feed, how
Golly.
they breed, everything about it, and how many
Unbelievable.
they actually have. Like that's the goal for the U.S. population is they have to understand that there needs to be a limit, right, on cattle production.
I'm blown away by this story. I
And
am
I held it
blown.
for Chad. So for people, Chad was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I'm just going to tell you on the podcast because I want to see your reaction." But there is,
I
I mean, it's hard to find the words to really say. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it.
wow.
I guess to get back to the grassroots of things and to wrap this deal up, NFR is going on right now.
Yeah.
Steve Stratford's son, JR.
Yeah.
I haven't been watching much, but I do get on Facebook and I try to find it. Chris Earle's always posting the videos of JR putting in a 85 to 90 point ride every night. He's a bull rider. Steve Stratford has, uh, he's on Facebook, Cattle Chat with Steve Stratford. He's an order buyer in a sale barn, Pratt, Kansas. And yeah, just it's been really cool to
I
see.
think JR has placed I'm not sure about last night, but I think he's placed or won every round.
Hmm. There you go.
That's
Yeah, I
pretty
don't know.
cool.
I haven't. Do you watch it? I haven't been able. I don't even know. I know it's the Cowboy Channel, and once they got into all
I
that, I kind of.
I left my subscription to the Cowboy Channel because I subscribed to it last year for the NFR and I couldn't get the NFR and I'm like this is baloney and I paid my dues so I did so no I haven't been
Yeah.
watching it but I have been watching a lot of tidbits. I don't have a TV so I can't watch it.
You don't have a TV? What are you
Well,
talking
we
about?
have a TV. I don't have a TV in my office.
Oh, okay.
My wife has a TV in the living room and it's always on pro football all day, all night,
I thought it was
every
Texas Tech. How about them Raiders?
How
Right?
about him? I don't know anything about him.
Oh, I don't. They beat somebody. BYU. They beat BYU. I think I followed a little bit,
I don't follow
enough
it
to
all
kind of
on.
know what's going on. Anyway, good luck, J.R. Stratford, and
Yeah, we'll try to get Steve on here one day.
yeah, that's what we were thinking. That'd be cool. If he could win the
Yeah,
world, and then we'll have Dad on to see what that's about. We all know what
pretty cool.
he's getting interviewed every night. I want to hear what Steve has to say. Go to
Definite.
Fortune. What's that?
It's definitely something to be proud of. That's cool.
Yeah, really cool. Grassroots cowboy deal.
Yep.
All right. Thank you to Fortune Triangle S Ranch at fortunetrianglesranch.com. Go to there. They're selling at Fort Pierre on January 17th and their annual private treaty bull sale February 14th. Call Wayne at 605-891-8064 or Raleigh at 605-891-8065. Thank you to those folks Go to lonesomelands.com, click support, and if you subscribe, these are not for sale. I'm holding up the ear tag that I'm turning into a luggage tag. Um, Anybody that subscribes by the end of the year will get one of these. Maybe we'll have them for sale at some point. But and if you've subscribed and you're no longer a subscriber, you're going to get one in too anyway, because I can't really sort that out. And thanks to everybody who's got us this far, I guess. This is my going
Yeah.
to be my thank, because I haven't ever sent anything out. Nobody's ever got anything really extra for subscribing, so this is going to be the start of it, hopefully, and we can keep things like this happening. What else? Anything
That's
we're
about it.
forgetting? There's always something we're forgetting, but thanks everybody for hanging in there. Stay
And
tuned. Lots to come.
there's lots of good stuff coming.
See you next week.
Adios.